Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 247 of the Book Cougars, two middle-aged women on the hunt for a good read. I'm Emily.
And I'm Chris. And we're going to start today with a big old thank you to Alicia for sending us a wonderful contribution.
Thank you so much, Alicia. And just a reminder that you can donate to us on your own. You don't have to be joining clubs or doing anything like that. Alicia sent us a donation via PayPal. Thank you so much. It really helps keep the podcast going.
It absolutely does. We also heard from listener Lisa, who went on a Biblio adventure to, she says, a lovely independent bookstore in Perrysburg, Ohio, called Gathering Volumes. Isn't that a great name?
Such a great name.
Gathering Volumes. So she wrote, I bought my copy of After Midnight there. If you get out that way, the owner, Denise Phillips, is lovely, and she does a lot to get books out into the community.
So nice. And Lisa's the one that told us about this new collection of short stories by Daphne du Maurier, After Midnight. It has a great cover. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you for letting us know about that bookstore. That's an area that I get to. My brother lives up in the Cleveland area, and I have family in Columbus, so I traverse Ohio. So I appreciate that recommendation.
At the very end of this episode, we will be giving you our 2025 holiday gift recommendations. We started this way back with our single-digit episodes, whenever that was. I think it might have been our second episode that we ever did.
It was.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Where we each recommend some bookish ideas for holiday gift giving for yourself, for a loved one, for both of you. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, that'll be at the very end of the episode. So, Chris, what are you currently reading?
I am currently enjoying Citizen Reporters, S.S. McClure, Ida Tarbell, and the magazine that rewrote America. This is by Stephanie Gordon, and it is what it says. It's about these two people, S.S. McClure, who was McClure's magazine, which is a hugely popular magazine. At the end of the 19th century, early 20th century, it was definitely a high competitor with all the other popular magazines of the time. And Ida Tarbell, who became his first staff reporter, she was a young woman from Pennsylvania who vowed early to be a spinster and live a life of the mind. And she was living in Paris at the time. She really wanted to make it on her own and was writing freelance articles from Paris. And McClure got a hold of some of her writing. He had been syndicating fiction, literature, let's say. You know how newspapers syndicate articles by reporters? Well, McClure started doing that for literature and syndicating them to other magazines. And he got so good at that he decided to do his own magazine. He wanted to be a tastemaker. So his magazine became very successful, in part because of Ida Tarbell's reporting. It sounds like she was one of the first long-form reporters who really was a stickler for searching archives and court records and only reporting on stuff that was verifiable with documentation. And
so she wasn't into fake news.
Not at all. She was like the antithesis of that. This book is making me want to read a biography of her because I think she was such an independent person who was really seeking the truth about matters. She wrote some biographical long-form pieces for McClure's, and right now I'm at the point where she's writing her huge piece on Standard Oil that was very important for the time period. Loving this book so much. I don't remember how it came onto my radar, but if somebody recommended it to me, thank you. Thank you. Again, that's Citizen Reporters by Stephanie Gordon. Perfect for Nonfiction November.
Indeed. I'm reading The Chicken Sisters by K.J. Del Antonia. The subtitle of this is All's Fair in Love, War, in the Kitchen. Or maybe it's not fair, as I'm learning as I read the novel. But it's about two families and these two restaurants that they own that have gone back centuries. And the specialty is fried chicken, thus the name The Chicken Sisters. They're in a small town called Merrimack, Kansas. And one of the sisters has married into the opposing family. And so she now works at that restaurant. So it's created a little trouble in the family. But, the restaurants are doing what they need to do. The two sisters are Amanda and May. Amanda is the one who stuck around and married and stayed in the small town. And then May is the one that went off to the big city and went to Brooklyn and is currently living there with her husband and 2 children. And she's a little bit of an influencer in her own right. And Amanda, the sister living back in Kansas, decides to write to this organization, Food Wars. That's a reality television show that pits restaurants against each other. And Food Wars comes to town and creates a lot of problems for the sisters. I'm reading it and also listening to the audiobook, which is narrated by Xe Sands and Cassandra Campbell. They're doing a really great job with the narration. There's a lot of different voices. One fun thing, I got this book out of the library, and when I got to the pages in the 50s, there was a little piece of paper, a little bit of ephemera. And Chris and I have talked before about finding things in books at used bookstores and libraries. And so I took out, it's a beautiful piece of paper, and on it is handwritten the name Patrick Bringley. And I couldn't believe that, because that's the name of the author of the book I talked about on the last episode, All the Beauty in the World, The Metropolitan Museum of Art and Me by Patrick Bringley. So I thought that was just such a funny synchronicity. And I, of course, wonder why they wrote it down. And then I feel terrible if they went to the library looking for this book that someone told them to read or that they wanted to read, and that piece of paper was in the book that they returned. But it's my palate cleanser after reading How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix, which we're going to talk about soon. And I'm really enjoying it. It's just a really fun read. Again, that's The Chicken Sisters by K.J. Del Antonia.
Nice. Well, I'm also listening to an audio version of Dracula by Bram Stoker, a book I've read a bunch of times. I've listened to other audio versions as well. There's one that has a bunch of narrators and famous actors and everything, but I wanted one just by one person. And I'm listening to it very slowly, just here and there, falling asleep at night or driving in the car when I don't want to listen to a podcast or something, or don't want to start one anyway. And the narrator is Mark Gatiss, and he's doing an excellent job with all of these different voices. There's something just, they're so talented actors, that they can do that. Like, there's multiple women voices, there's multiple male voices, different accents, which is really cool to get the different accents, the British accents, and then, Dracula's accent, who is from Transylvania. So lots of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I found that on Libro FM. I was looking for something comforting. And I know it might sound strange that Dracula is comforting, but it is.
Well, I mean, it's that book that changed your worldview on reading. I mean, maybe some listeners don't know that this was a very formative novel for you.
Right. Yeah. It is the book that got me into becoming what I call a self-selecting reader. So
it's like visiting an old friend. Mm-hmm. So I can see where that's comforting.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Emily, what have you just read?
I finished The Bone Thief by Vanessa Lillie. Ooh. This is the second book in a series that doesn't really have a name. So maybe she's not referring to it as a series. It's a second book that has the same character that was in the Blood Sisters. Maybe that's the better way to say it.
It's kind of like old school mystery, quote, series, like Patricia Cornwell's Case Scarpetta. It's like they don't usually call it like book whatever in the series. They have now more with ebooks and audiobooks, so people don't get confused digitally. But it's not numbered like other series are.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't refer to it as a series anywhere. Mm-hmm. And I haven't seen it in any of the paperwork or, things that the publisher sent to us. But it does have Sid, our character that was in Blood Sisters, which was the other novel that I was referring to. And she's an archaeologist with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The action took place in Oklahoma, which is where Sid Walker is from. But she's living in Rhode Island, and the action in The Bone Thief takes place in Rhode Island. There are a couple characters that came back to live with Sid in Rhode Island from Oklahoma, which is interesting. I do think you could read this as a standalone for sure, but I was glad that I had read Blood Sisters because there is a lot of reference to things that happened before. Sid is still working, as I said, for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and there is a camp called Camp Quahog, which is a camp that kids go to and spend time and do campish type of things. But also there's a big archaeological dig on the grounds. And Sid comes there for two reasons. One, a teenage Native woman has gone missing near the camp, and some bone remains that were dug up went missing. They were stolen, actually. So there's a lot going on in this novel. And one of the things that I like about Vanessa Lillie is she's really also trying to educate people as she's writing about Indigenous culture. And the Narragansett people are who she's writing about in this novel. And the Narragansett, their tribe is 350 years old. They were the first tribe to see the boats come, invading America. So it's very interesting. There's a lot to learn as you're reading. I put the book down quite often and did a little side research. There's also a wonderful author's note in the back where Vanessa talks about some of the information that she, learned because she was researching. Vanessa is from Oklahoma herself. So when she was writing The Blood Sisters, there was a lot that she already knew about that area. As she was writing The Bone Thief, she was trying to learn about her new home, which is Rhode Island. And she talks about that in the author's note. I did also listen to the audiobook some, and it was narrated by Carolina Hoyos, who did a wonderful job. And then Vanessa Lillie actually narrates the author's note, which I thought was it really brought it home. I got to the end of the book, I was reading it, but when I had seen that she narrated the author's note, I put my earbuds in and listened to her read it to me instead. One of the things she's really addressing in this novel is current day issue, which is the issue of remains versus belongings versus artifacts. And that there's a big movement happening right now where people want their remains back. They're actually belongings. They're not artifacts. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I will talk more about that in Biblio Adventures because I got the opportunity to see Vanessa speak about this book.
It's great.
So again, it's called The Bone Thief by Vanessa Lillie, out now.
Well, I had some DNFs in my life lately. The first one was Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. And this one, I was really looking forward to it. And it could be my mood. It could be an age thing. This one has won lots of awards. I bought it recently at the Twisted Spine, a bookstore in Brooklyn, when we visited. And it's about a young woman who is living near a place called Camp Damascus, which is a gay conversion camp. And she's living in a cult, a Christian-type cult. She's 20. But I think kids in this cult go to school later, so she's still in high school. And she's starting to realize that maybe she's not straight. And her parents are very much in the cult, and she's very much God-loving. And I just wasn't in the mood for it. So again, it could be an age thing. It could just be a mood thing. So I wanted just to give it a bit of a shout out here because I think it might be of interest to folks. And I'm going to hold on to it just in case. I was thinking that maybe I'll try again this summer. Again, that's Camp Damascus by Chuck Tingle. Tingly spines is something that Edith Wharton talks about when it comes to ghost stories. And I did feel some tingles while reading this. So that's why I'm not completely giving up on it or donating it right away. The other book that I DNF'd, I don't have to be as kind about because the author's dead. I'm joking. So Hell House by Richard Matheson. I did DNF this. So I gave Hell House multiple chances. I was going to DNF it at one point, but then this scene came up involving ectoplasm that was really good, really well done. And if you know Ghostbusters, the film, you know about ectoplasm. And this is quoting from the book. So spiritualists refer to ectoplasm, what it is, it's derived almost entirely from the medium's body, the remainder being admixtures from the air and the medium's costume, fibrous vegetable remains, bacterial spores, starch grains, food and dust particles, etc. The bulk of it, however, is organic living matter. So the thing about the ectoplasm that kept me reading, not only was it interesting and kind of well written, like he talked about how it's coming out of her body, almost like sea vegetation and the wave, and I love that. It's such a beautiful image. But I'm a member of the New England Archivists, and their latest newsletter had an article about spirit photography in the 19th century, early 20th century, when people would have a photo and then an image of someone ghostly looking in the background. And so in our year of reading about ghosts, we've come across spiritualism several times where it was a movement in the 19th century where people wanted to contact their loved ones who've passed. And so this spiritual photography was part of that. And I also ended up watching a video that another archivist did about their collections and spiritual photography, which led me to at least a review of a book. And the title of the book is The Art of Ectoplasm, Encounters with Winnipeg's Ghost Photographs. It's edited by Serena Cacawewe. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But the connection in here in the review is made to Ghostbusters. And apparently Dan Aykroyd's great-grandfather was the member of the Chautauqua Lilydale Society spiritualist movement. So this spiritualism, ectoplasm, was part of their family conversations and everything, which I thought was fascinating. And then there it is in Ghostbusters, right? And when it came up in Hell House, I thought, oh, okay, I'll give it a little bit more time. But its time was short.
I mean, it sounds like maybe he has writing chops, or had, I should say. He's passed away, but...
Well, as I said, it's very episodic. Like, it's just too much like that. It's just kind of like, blah. I just felt like I was in a tennis match with, like, 8 balls, and it just wasn't holding my attention very well. But I really loved his book, I Am Legend, which is great. And I know he was very popular. And I imagine that the blurbs from Stephen King and Peter Straub were written at the time, and there were different standards. So the setup for this book, it's very much like The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, where you have a team, like a researcher who wants to research something and has a team going into this haunted house. In Hell House's case, it's a wealthy publisher who's dying, and on his deathbed sends this researcher of paranormal stuff who's a scientist into this house, along with a medium who is a reverend, a woman, and a guy who has survived one of the other 2 times people tried to investigate Hell House. 8 people have died in the past from this house, and a lot more people have died in the house. It sounds like a good setup, and there's some interesting tension and also maybe synchronicity a little bit between scientific exploration and spirituality, which I thought was really promising, but I just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take the misogyny. Homophobia was creeping in, and I was just like, oh, no, I'm just not there. And this is a book I'm definitely going to be putting in a little free library somewhere. It was published first in 1971. So on to blurbs, okay? Stephen King wrote, "The scariest haunted house novel ever written." That's what Stephen King said. Peter Straub, "One of the absolute best contemporary horror novels." And my blurb, this is my brief Goodreads review.
Wait for it.
"Misogynistic, homophobic, relentlessly episodic, and boring as hell." Chris Wallach.
Well, we had considered that as one of our read-alongs. I'm sure glad we didn't choose it.
I would have investigated it a little bit more before we did choose it. But, one of the reasons we shied away from it was because of the time period. And, this is, as I've said elsewhere, it's kind of like a teenage boy fantasy of women. I mean, it's just, you can imagine just from that statement alone. But, there were enough things that kind of kept me going for a little while. But in the end, I just had to let it go. And I think in the last episode where I talked about women hissing? They hiss when there's cold water or something?
That was a video.
Okay. Well, everyone, in a video last week, I talked about how women, when they're cold, like from a shower or they touch something cold, they hiss. Apparently, they also do it when they see blood. The sight of the deep, blood-oozing cut made Edith hiss.
It's so weird.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't even know what that means.
I was trying to think about, what do I do when I'm cold? I more go, like you suck your teeth more than hiss. You kind of pull in. You don't push out, It's more of like a vampire thing. Hey, maybe if there were a vampire in this book, it would have kept me going. But alas, I will stop talking about Hell House by Richard Matheson now.
And I will talk about Witches of Dubious Origin by Jenn McKinlay. I read this one for, I want to say like, I don't know, a month and a half or 2 months. And it was partly because I got it as an ARC and it was on my Kindle. And I read it, I think, when I was at my son's visiting, which wasn't a good idea because I was tired and, not able to concentrate. And then I think I did read it successfully on the plane ride home. Anyway, I just kept picking it up and reading it in bits and bobs. So I don't feel like I gave it my full all, but I did enjoy the story. I also think it was just long. It was 400 pages, I think, which on your e-reader, you can't always tell how long a novel is and where you're, how much more you have to go. And I've talked about it a couple times already, so I won't say much except that for Jenn McKinlay, this was a bit of a genre switch because it was fantasy and she's known more for her romance. And I did read on her personal website that she's doing a lot of genre switching and enjoying it and thankful to her team for following along. She is funny. We got to talk to her as part of the Jungle Red writers. There's a video on our BookTube that I can put in the show notes where we talk to them. And I remember her being very funny and it comes out in her writing. And so I appreciated that. And there's also a lot of witchcraft. Zoe is handed this grimoire seemingly from her mother who has passed away. Her mother never wanted her to get into witchcraft, and it's been 20 years since she had seen her mother, and she comes to learn throughout the novel that there's a reason her mom didn't want her to do that. And she also picks up a really fun group of chosen, well, maybe not so chosen, I guess this was all kind of chosen for her, but a fun group of other witches that get down and dirty with her. And there's a little bit of dark magic, of course, and a little tiny romance. So overall, I really enjoyed it. And I do enjoy Jenn McKinlay's writing and her insertion of humor as well. Again, that was called Witches of Dubious Origin by Jenn McKinlay, and it is out now.
Nice. I also finished Anne Brontë Nightwalker by Gia Haff. I love this book initially. The beginning and the middle were great. Towards the end, it kind of started losing me. I lost a little bit of patience with it. And I know this is the author's first novel. And I've heard authors talk about, where their challenges lie. Some people are great at beginnings and they suffer through endings, or the middle part is their challenge. And I have a feeling it was just the ending needed more help because it got into some fights and stuff, and that usually doesn't capture my imagination a lot. I just usually kind of like, okay, fight. So that's why like S.A. Cosby's Blacktop Wasteland, when there's that chase scene, like he wrote that so well. It was so engaging. But normally like fight scenes, chase scenes, I'm just like, blah, blah, blah. Let's just move along. So anyway, the book didn't last for me that well. It did kind of fall apart. The ending was satisfactory for the most part. And again, if you haven't listened to the last episode, this is about Anne Brontë, the writer from the 19th century, who's a vampire living in Asheville, North Carolina, and working as a paramedic. Great setup. I love the characters. I love the setting. The plot was great. It was just the ending kind of didn't hold for me. And it's supposed to be book one in a series. So if a book two is coming out, I'm definitely going to be getting it. So again, that's Anne Brontë Nightwalker by Gia Haff. And huge thanks to Melinda, who is a booktuber at Web of Stories, who recommended it.
Well, we had a joint read, our Q4 read-along, How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. We also had a great Zoom conversation with listeners who read along with us on Sunday. Thank you to all of you who participated. We also have had people chatting over on Goodreads about it, and we appreciate everybody who's been piping in. This one was a wild ride.
Cacawewe!
If you know, you know.
Yes, it was wild. And we had no idea there was so much puppet and doll action in this book. Because again, we do not read the books that we choose as read-alongs beforehand because we want to be as surprised as everyone else.
Yes, and we were.
Indeed.
And on the last episode, I said I have some, doll issues. So it was more puppets. And puppets are different than dolls. And then there were also a few marionettes, and there was a lot of different things.
Yeah.
But do you want to give and I think I will say there is a big reveal at the end, and we are not going to reveal it. We might have a few spoilers, but we're not going to do the big reveal at the end. We want people who haven't read it to be able to come to that on their own. But we will give you a brief synopsis about it.
Sure. So it's basically about a sister and a brother. They're adults, and their parents died tragically in a car accident. The daughter, Louise, is living in San Francisco. Mark, the son, is living in South Carolina where the parents were living. And of course, now they have to come together to sell the family home, which is a tiny, small, well, it's not tiny. It's a small old home that hasn't been all that well maintained in a very prominent area where people pretty much buy houses and tear them down and build, fancy new homes. So it's a standout for that reason. There's extended family members who get involved with the story. No surprise, probably, Louise and Mark do not get along. They do not like one another. They don't respect one another. And you find out why throughout the course of the story. And I thought the sibling relationship was really well done. There's a lot of gross factor. I think some people who are not used to horror maybe were surprised a bit by that. But basically, they try to start getting rid of their mom's huge, overwhelming doll and puppet collection, including a puppet that was very much a part of their mom's life and their life growing up.
Named Pupkin.
Pupkin, yes. And he is the one who always says, Cacawewe! Love him. So things escalate. They try to start selling the house. They have a cousin come over to look at the house, and she's like, well, this is haunted. You guys got to clear up that mess. And then, I'm not going to be your agent on this one. So the unfolding of the story is them working together and against each other at times. You get their backstories on kind of what drove a wedge between them. And in the end, you were left kind of beaten up as a reader.
Yeah, there might be, like some appendages missing, a little blood and guts. I'm raising my hand when Chris said that part. Some people might have been surprised by the amount of blood and guts. I was. I have to say that I, for the most part, listened to it via that enhanced audiobook that was from Graphic Audio. So it had sound effects and different voices and a lot going on. So some of the scenes, there's a lot of action, and I felt like it was really helpful to me, and I was engaged because I was listening to it. I'm not sure how it would have felt if I had read it. One of the things that was kind of lost in translation until I picked up the novel, the paper copy of the novel, was that it's separated into 5 parts, and they are Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief. And that really meant a lot to me when I saw that, because the book is very much about grief, which I think Hendrix did so well.
Yeah, and we talked about that during the Zoom conversation about how horror really can explore issues like grief so deeply and so well.
And surprisingly, because as we said, it can be bloody and that sort of thing, which you'd think would take away from it, but it didn't at all.
Right.
And I thought his writing was great. He sprinkles in a lot of humor. So even when horrible things are happening, you kind of find yourself giggling, which is weird but nice. Like, this book wasn't going to give me nightmares, and I think partly because of that he made it kind of funny.
I read it on my e-reader at night before bed is how I consumed this book. And I did have one night where I had some wild ass dreams that I attribute to the book, but thank God Pupkin wasn't involved.
Yeah, and the voice of Pupkin, because I listened to it, is going to forever be an impression in my brain.
Can you imitate it?
No.
Oh, come on.
No,
try.
I can't. It's like... It was really high pitched.
That sounds good. And it sounds like how I imagined him in my head.
And then there was a child, Poppy, who was the sister, Louise's daughter, was Poppy. And that was a child voice, but it was different than Pupkin's, because Pupkin was kind of like a child's voice that had inhaled a helium balloon, whereas Poppy's was more just a kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some really good twists and turns, and some of the things that surprised some people didn't surprise other people, which is always fun when that happens.
Yeah. So overarchingly, I really enjoyed it. Some of the scenes got a little long in the tooth, as they say, and some of our listeners talked about that. And I think particularly it was one of the parts of backstory where that you were learning more about Mark in his 20s, when, you know, that time period when you first leave home and kind of discover who you are. And I think even though that did get a little long, it was really important to understand him as an adult, because one of the things that Grady Hendrix is doing in this novel is showing you that I think the sibling relationship is often complicated by the fact that your siblings forever see you as a kid. And then when you're coming back to handle this really serious situation of your parents dying, and it's a period of grief, but you have to do some really adult things, it can be complicated by that fact that you still don't understand this person as an adult.
Right, exactly. Because, you know, Louise is the older sister. She sees herself as the responsible one, the one who finished college and got away and has a life. And she looks down at her brother as being, you know, basically just this, you know, F-up kind of guy who can never get it together, and that he's sloppy and has a belly and all this kind of stuff. But you find out more, because I think initially it's all through Louise's eyes, and you do start getting some different perspective along the way. Even though his background section was hard to read, I appreciated it when it was over. And one of our listeners made the comparison to the Over story, actually, about how people get radicalized, which was, I thought, interesting. I haven't read the Over story. It's on my bookshelf. So, and another listener did say that the pacing was a bit odd, that it, you know, it was really wasn't very consistent, and it was jarring at times, which I agree. And I think that fits in with the grief theme as well as horror in general, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, but the campy humor was something that people appreciated. And it made some people reconsider the Velveteen Rabbit a bit, to make another literary reference. But overall, everybody who attended, except one person, either really liked it or they were like, maybe not so much. So the only person who really disliked it actually read it twice, and that was Aunt Ellen.
You go, Ellen. We appreciate your participation.
So, yeah, totally. And I don't know, you know what? Did we ask her if she changed her mind at all after the discussion? I don't remember if we did.
We didn't phone into the cat phone on Ellen and let us know if your feelings were different after. I mean, the other thing that I've, you know, in preparing to talk about it today that I thought about is there are things, I feel like he dropped Easter eggs that I would love to go back and reread it and see. Like one of the things was about marionettes, because when Mark is in his 20s and discovers this troupe that he gets involved with, they talk about marionettes. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting because of the way, well, marionettes and puppets in general, they're often something that somebody else is controlling, right? And I was like, oh, I would love to go back and read that part again. I'm probably not going to. But it did make me think that this is one of those books that when you get to the end and read the reveal, you do kind of want to go back and see.
Yeah, and he has some stuff at the end of the book, too, some commentary about the history of puppets and marionettes. And, you know, the creepy factor with puppets is that they are an extension of your hand and they become a part of you. And that becomes a big part of the story.
Yeah.
But I really felt the dustiness of the home. And all of those dolls hanging around, like, and then there's a scene when they're eating Chinese food and pizza and everything's getting cold and congealed. I was like right there in that kitchen.
Yeah. Pizza Chinese. Yeah. He's very good at setting in place for sure.
Yeah. So I don't know. Did your opinion go up after the conversation?
Well, I mean, I was already at like, what would you call it? 10 o'clock. So I enjoyed it. I mean, I particularly enjoyed it for the fact that we're reading this genre and trying to understand it. I felt like it was very different than things I typically read. And the fact that it discussed grief, which is something that I'm fascinated by and have, of course, by my age, experienced several times, I thought it was really interesting. And so I did enjoy it. I'm glad we read it.
Yeah, same. Me too. And just all the different layers of grief that are in this book, as somebody said, undigested grief, and how that comes out. And for those of you who might be listening to this podcast for the very first time, Our other quarterly read-alongs this year were The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, The Good House by Tananarive Due, The Upstairs House by Julia Fine, and now How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. So an interesting collection of ghost stories. And Melinda thought it was interesting that we're doing a year of ghost stories, and these were all haunted houses. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of talked a tad about, what is horror? What is a ghost story? What's gothic? And Edith Wharton talks about ghost stories in her collection of ghost stories, that ghost stories are typically short. They don't tend to make good longer books, other than her friend Henry James's The Turn of the Screw, which I disagree with her on that. I don't think that's
time and place.
Yeah, right. So
yeah. So thank you to everyone who's read along all year with us. We hear some of you talking. We can hear you asking, what is the theme for next year? What is the read-along theme for 2026? We're not going to tell you today, but we will tell you in December. We promise we'll give you some time to prepare.
Yes. This episode is sponsored by
In Resonant Blue and Other Stories, the first collection from award-winning short fiction author Mary Venzel White. 12 tales center around turning points, a game show for those seeking love, a family wedding that unveils another secret union, a woman's impulsive trip to Greece to find her first love. Whether backed against a wall, reeling from a loss, or forced to confront a painful truth, each doggedly pursues the glimmer of possibility shining on the horizon. Check the show notes for more information. So, Chris, did you go on any Biblio adventures?
You know what? I did. I had a browse down at a Barnes & Noble, the one in Milford, Connecticut. I was meeting some colleagues for lunch, and it was right around the corner. So, of course, I went in for a browse after we had a lovely lunch, and I saw some good things. And I bought a book and some gifts. There were a lot of people there, and I think a lot of people are already doing holiday shopping.
Yeah, which is why we're going to give you our holiday gifts at the end of this episode.
Yeah, but it was nice. I have new glasses, so it was nice to be able to see a little bit better. That's always helpful.
Yes, for sure.
How about you?
I had a great Biblio adventure to Bank Square Books in Mystic, Connecticut, where I got to see Luanne Rice in conversation with Vanessa Lillie about The Bone Thief. It was just a great event. And the first thing she said to Vanessa was, your writing is really grounded to land and place. And Vanessa's response to that was interesting because she said she was trying for 13 years to write a successful book. She's one of those authors that has many novels that, will never see the light of day. And she said she finally realized she wasn't writing setting well, that she had to learn that setting is a character. And that really is true in these two novels I've read of hers, The Blood Sisters and The Bone Thief. What did she say? A couple things I've already said when I was talking about the book earlier, that the Narragansett tribe was the first to see boats come over. They have a powwow every summer, and it's the oldest powwow in North America. Consecutively every year, they celebrated their 350th. And one of the things that she talked about is what's happening right now in current day that she brings into this novel is that museums are having to change what they're doing. Egypt just opened up one of the largest museums. They're asking for a lot of their items back. And it made me think of Patrick Bringley's book about the Metropolitan Museum of Art, because in several scenes of the book, he's talking about the mummies, and it's one of the most visited parts of the museum. And the point that Vanessa was making is those were never meant to be artifacts exhibited in a museum. Those were things that people prayed over. They were never meant to be exhumed, and Egypt wants them back. And she said if you go to a lot of museums right now, those sorts of exhibits are closed. She and her family just went to the Museum of Natural History in New York City, and the indigenous exhibit was closed because they're trying to figure these things out as our understanding of colonialism is becoming more present to us. She talked about the concept of being two-spirit. On the back of her author bio, it says that she's proudly two-spirit. She said this is a newish term for a very old concept. it can be queer identity, but it can also be a more balanced understanding between masculine and feminism, and that gender was not traditional in indigenous cultures at all. And it's a newly adopted term as people are decolonizing gender. And Puritans are the ones who said that we had to look at gender in a particular way. So I thought that was really interesting. And then she also talked about something very close to where we live at Yale, that Skull and Bones Society has the skull and femur of Geronimo.
Wow.
And they still use it. And the family of Geronimo asked for it back, and Yale said no. So it's really interesting. And she talks about so much history I didn't know, like King Philip's War and the Great Swamp Massacre. And so she said her family heritage, because she's Cherokee, her history is more the Trail of Tears. And so when she moved here to Rhode Island, she learned about the Great Swamp Massacre, which is very similar to the Trail of Tears. And then she also talked about how the female leaders, and sachem is the term for a chief, the sachem were diplomats, and a lot of them were females. And that plays a part in this novel that she does really well. So I liked that a lot. But again, she's really looking at this concept of remains versus belongings versus artifacts. It was so eye-opening to me, and I appreciate that about her writing. And it was a great event. She's everywhere right now, so if you're interested in seeing her, I'll put a link to her website and her events page. And she also is fantastic on social media, so you can follow her there. She spends a lot of time interviewing other authors and shares, her book events in a really fun way.
Nice. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to The Bone Thief. The issue of repatriation of items, even photographs. There was recently a case with Harvard and photographs of formerly enslaved people and their descendants wanting those photographs. And I think, colonization, there's so many tentacles to it that people are just waking up to the harms.
And academia, she said, the amount of items sitting in archives and sitting on shelves, it's just overwhelming.
Yeah, when you think about the 19th century, like look at even, Garner and her museum, like wealthy Americans and, Westerners in general in the 19th century and early 20th century just buying everything they can from these other countries, whether it was other Western art. But as we saw in her collections, there's more ancient items in there too, and some religious items from other cultures. And, it is a shocking thing when you first start thinking about it.
Yeah.
How much of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Is just so deeply embedded.
Yeah. And accepted. And there's that, it's tricky because there is the educational aspect to it, right? Of learning. You can learn about other cultures by going to a museum and seeing these things, but are they appropriate? And did they get them appropriately?
Exactly. Right. I mean, so much of it is just taken,
right,
and found,
exactly.
and, yeah.
And
you don't think about that when you're a child, for sure. Like one of my favorite museums when I was a kid was the Museum of Natural History in Chicago, which, I love that museum. But how much of their stuff did they get without permission back in the day?
Yeah. Or for permission from people who shouldn't have given it. Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, there was no permission back then.
Yeah.
Whoever had the most money took what they wanted.
Yes,
which,
exactly.
We're getting off topic a tad, but it sounds like another great book by Vanessa Lillie.
Yeah, and a good event. I'm sorry you couldn't join me. She had to do WORK.
I did, and not in Cincinnati. That's a joke for all of you people of a certain age.
Yes, that's right. So what about upcoming jaunts? We have a joint jaunt on November 20th. We're going to be heading to the Harvard Bookstore to see Oinka Braithwaite talk about her new novel, Cursed Daughters, at the Harvard Bookstore. She'll be in conversation with Hannah Halperin at 7:00. We would love to see some of you Boston folks there.
Yeah, let us know if you're going to be able to make it. Maybe we can meet up for dinner beforehand.
Yeah, that'd be really fun. And that book, Cursed Daughters, is also going to be our giveaway for our Patreon community in December. Chris, what is our Patreon community?
It is a community of readers who are just fantastic human beings. Yes, that's what they are. Patreon, for those of you who don't know, is a site where you can do a monthly donation, an ongoing monthly donation towards a community or a creator who is putting out something into the world. And so ours is $1 and up. And if you are a patron at the $1 or above, you're automatically entered into the monthly giveaway. And then for people at the $5 and above level, that is entry into our monthly reading salon,
which takes place every fourth Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah.
We do send you a little bit of swag when you join our community, and that depends at the tier level that you join. But we have bookmarks and duffel
bags to hide the bodies in.
That would be a tote bag. And all of that is available on our Patreon page, and we'll put that link. It's always in the show notes at the bottom of every show note. So anyway, we would love to have you join the community. If you're interested, we'd love your support. And it's also just a really great group of readers. We love our monthly reading salon so much. And the next one will be on November 23rd at 7 p.m. And we're going to be talking about food-related writing. I already have my list. I'm so excited.
Well, How to Sell a Haunted House would qualify.
Would. Pizza Chinese.
In a blender.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm teasing. I immediately thought of Pat Conroy.
Oh, interesting.
And his seafood. And there's the book, The Beach House, that starts in Rome, I believe. Mm-hmm. And he's talking about, making pasta or some kind of pasta dish.
Yeah. Anyone who feels slightly turned off by this theme for our next... Remember, there's food in everything you read. We're very flexible. We're not talking about cookbooks here. So I'm hoping when I finish The Chicken Sisters that I talked about that I'm currently reading, there is a show, a Hallmark show of some kind. I don't know if it's one movie or if it's serialized, but I intend to dip into that. And then speaking of Dracula... The gentleman caller has been reading Dracula for the last several weeks, and he asked me if I would please watch the 1992 adaptation by Francis Ford Coppola with him. Uh-oh.
Don't get me started.
You don't like that adaptation?
No.
Okay.
It annoyed me that the full title is Bram Stoker's Dracula. I'm like, that's ballsy, especially when you're not exactly following the storyline. I mean, to be honest, I should probably rewatch it, but it was created during the AIDS epidemic, so there's a lot of blood.
Oh.
A lot of blood.
Okay.
More blood than your average vampire novel.
Movie, you mean?
Movie, yeah.
Movie. Oh, I don't want to watch that.
Yeah. But it's Winona Ryder plays one of the main characters, and
Keanu Reeves is in it.
Other famous people. Yeah. It was very, very popular.
Well, maybe I'll watch it, but I'll just put my eye mask on that I wear at night. And hold Jim's hand so he feels like I'm there with him in spirit.
Yeah. It's so interesting. If you're going to watch it, maybe I'll rewatch it and see what I think this time. But, I was such a purist back then, too. I just didn't like other creatives taking a lot of leeway with somebody else's storyline, especially when you put their name in the title and call it Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like, come on.
Well, let's do that. Well, because I think he's finishing it this week. So let's both watch it and we'll try to talk about it the next episode.
All right.
Oh, I'm just living my dreams here, people.
See, being in a relationship is hard. Oh, my God. So I have another Biblio adventure planned for November 18th. This is a virtual couch Biblio adventure through the North Haven Memorial Library. Unlock the secret language of connection with super communicator Charles Duhigg. So look at that. The secret language of connection could be watching Dracula with your partner when you don't like blood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the things we do for love. How about upcoming reads, Chris?
Well, I have a couple. Now, when I went on that Biblio adventure to Barnes & Noble, unplanned, I did buy a book for myself, The Gales of November, The Untold Story of the Edmund Fitzgerald by John U. Bacon. I love Gordon Lightfoot's song, The Gales of November, and I've been fascinated with the story of the Edmund Fitzgerald, and I've watched documentaries over the years and stuff, but I remember as a kid being on a road trip up north in Wisconsin. We have family friends who are from northern Wisconsin, and we'd go up there in the summers. So the Edmund Fitzgerald went down November 10th, 1975, and Gordon Lightfoot's song came out in 76. So there I was. It must have been 1976 when the song was hot, in the back of a station wagon, watching a drive as we drove past a lake, and the song came on the radio. And it was the first time I really remember listening to all of the lyrics and getting the whole story that he was singing about. And just like, I mean, I got teary-eyed as a little kid hearing about that. And that's when I learned about the Edmund Fitzgerald. So this book has been a long time coming.
Yeah, and it was just the anniversary of the sinking of that ship this week.
Yeah, November 10th. And this book is out from Live Right Publishing Corporation, a division of W.W. Norton and Company. So it has lots of pictures in it, color pictures as well. And then we had a fantastic book arrive here at Book Cougar headquarters. Thank you to Tiny Reparations Books for sending us a copy of Black Owned, The Revolutionary Life of the Black Bookstore by Shar Adams.
I have a couple. I have Typhoid Mary by Anthony Bourdain. This is a book that I picked up at the Provincetown bookstore when we were up on Cape Cod this summer. And it is a piece of nonfiction about Typhoid Mary. And she worked in a kitchen, which is part of the inspiration for Anthony Bourdain writing about it. And the gentleman caller already read it and really enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to digging in. I've never read Anthony Bourdain. I listened to part of Kitchen Confidential, but didn't get through it all. So I know he's a great writer, and I'm looking forward to that. And then I also have in my sweaty little palms a literary magazine, Flights, the literary magazine of Sinclair Community College. It is graced on the cover by our friend and author, Shuli K. Wood, who's been really focusing on her art lately. And it was so fun to see that she got a piece of her art on a literary magazine.
That's so cool.
It's really cool. I mean, I have so much respect for people who have a passion. They're learning, you know, she's learning this art thing and she's really focused on it and taking classes, and it's paying off. She's having success. And she also has a short story in here called Be the Evolution You Want to See in the World. And somebody else that folks might recognize, Sharon Short, also has a piece in here called The Blue Porch Swing. Both Sharon and Shuli have been guests on the podcast and on our BookTube channel if you want to learn more about them. And this is an annual literary magazine. Just comes out once a year in the fall. Sinclair Community College is in Dayton, Ohio, close to where I used to live. Well, is anyone in the holiday spirit?
Ho, ho, the mistletoe.
Dreidel, dreidel, dreidel. I was trying to think of a Hanukkah song. And we want to remind people that we very much encourage you to buy things for yourself as well. These are great gifts for yourself, for family, for friends. We do this every year. We started doing this on episode 2.
Unbelievable. Episode 2 came out in December 2016.
And here we are doing it again.
So we have 5 things apiece. We haven't compared notes, so we'll see if we have any crossover.
Yes. Shall I go first?
Sure.
Well, speaking of literary magazines, a subscription to a literary magazine I think would be really fun. One of the examples that I like is Plowshares. That's been in existence since 1971. It came back on my radar because they just hired Hanif Abdurakeb as their first nonfiction editor.
Oh, cool.
Really cool. And they have both digital, print, and archive subscriptions, so different levels of subscriptions. I think it starts at $18, and you can get a 6-month, a 1, 2, or 3 year. And there's lots of different literary magazines out there, but I think it's a great time to support them. Times are tough.
Mm-hmm. Well, first up on my list is a Yoto player. Have you heard of Yoto players?
I think I have. I'm looking at you because I feel like this is something. I was just in the Guilford Library on Friday, and I feel like someone told me about him. Tell me what it is.
Okay, so it's Yoto, Y-O-T-O player. They're little audio players for kids.
Yes, that is so funny.
Oh, that is so interesting. Yeah, these are really cool. So it's a little audio player. You know, you can plug it in. It runs on batteries too. And they have their titles broken down by ages. So like 0 to 2, and then 2, you know, up till 12 plus. And some of the titles that they have, I mean, they have a huge library of titles that you can choose from like Little Women, some classics, to, you know, Frog and Toad, and, you know, different age ranges. And I kind of listened to a few of them. You can preview them like you can on most audiobook sites. And the voices are a little bit younger. Some of them have some sound effects as well. Like the scene in Little Women that I listened to is when Jo finds out that Amy burned her manuscript. You know, so it's these two younger women, girl voices, like, and they really sound like they're arguing and going for each other, which I thought was great. Like, it sounded realistic, but not like scary for little kids probably. But the good thing about this is there's no screen on it. It's not like internet connected. So if you're worried about your kids, grandkids, any child having too much screen time, or maybe even yourself, because I was like, this looks kind of cool.
I know.
They have a larger version, which is still, it's not big. And then they have a mini version. It just looks neat. They even have a feature where you can create your own audio cards that would be playable, which I think is fantastic. So we'll put a link in the show notes to this. I think there's such a movement right now as we become more aware of the harm that screens do to young minds as well as older minds. But, you know, especially developing humans, and too much screen time could be problematic. But we've always been a species of storytellers, and we crave stories. So this could be a good, safe option for your child.
Yeah, that's so cool. I had Nina on Friday, which I don't typically have her on Friday. And we've gotten to the time in New England where it's, you know, dark at 4:20. And I was driving home with her from her daycare, and I thought, I am not ready to get in the house yet. So I stopped at the Guilford Library. And the Guilford Library children's area is amazing. I had never really been deep back into it. But there was another grandmother there with her visiting grandson who was probably 10. And he was just narrating stories to her. I mean, making her be the, you know, whatever. One time she was the spinster, and I was like, wow, a 10-year-old knows that word. And I said to her, he has such a great, vivid imagination. And she said, we gave him a Yodo. And I was like, what's a Yodo? And she told me, so it's so cool that, thank you for learning more about them, because I didn't look it up. And she said he just has, for the past several months, been listening to the Chronicles of Narnia. And it's really boosted his creative thinking. And I could really see it in the way he was doing his own storytelling.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a really cool synchronicity, isn't it? Wow.
Very cool. The next thing I'm recommending is Pigeon Foldable Stationery, which is inspired by origami. Chris and I spend a lot of time browsing bookstores, and this is something that I started seeing in kind of the notebook stationery section of different stores. And I finally purchased it when I was at Washington Depot bookstore for Alyssa Altman's event. And it's these beautiful boxes. They're made out of very colorful paper. And it's literally one piece of paper that folds in a very particular way. And when you open it, there's space for you to write a letter to somebody. And then it folds back up. You place the stamp so it seals it, write your address, and pop it in the mail. And they're really beautiful. And again, we're going to put all of these links in the show notes.
Nice. So the next thing I have is Biblio adventure related. And it is unusual. It's not something we talk about a lot, about our Biblio adventures, but in addition to going out to eat, which we do talk about sometimes, there's also the need for bio breaks. You know, they come up, and sometimes inconveniently, right? When you're out in the middle of nowhere driving, and all of a sudden nature strikes, and you have to do number one. This is called a P style. So just the letter P and then style. It is a device designed for women to be able to pee standing up. So you don't have to pull down your pants and squat. You just pee standing up. They come in a variety of different colors. They're really inexpensive. They're plastic, easily washable. There's no hard edges for bacteria to hide. And they really work. I've tried a couple of these in the past. I used to do a lot of hiking and backpacking, and they were not very successful. And this really works. So I have given them as gifts to different people in my life, and we'll put a link in the show notes. It's a great Biblio adventure companion, especially for road trips.
Indeed. Keep one in your car at all times. The next thing I have on my list is a Moco e-reader hand strap. I am starting to have a lot of problems with hand cramping when I read. on my Kindle. I put my Kindle in like, I kind of make like a backwards L or a right side L, depending on which hand I'm using. And I start to get this weird cramp in my hand. So the e-reader strap literally clips to the back of your e-reader on opposite corners. And then you can just slide your hand into the strap and hold it with your hand flat out, cramp free.
Very nice.
Yes. We should say that we're going to share some of these visually on our BookTube channel as well. Friday, which is prior to the dropping of this episode, we each shared one, and maybe we'll do that for the next few weeks so you can see them. And again, links in the show notes.
So when I was at Barnes & Noble the other day, I did a lot of browsing, and I was in the tarot section, and I noticed that they had a Charles Dickens tarot deck. I was like, what? I was like, that is so cool. So, of course, I looked at it and I checked it out. This is by Schiffer Books. So I was at their website, and they also have a Poe tarot deck, a Shakespearean tarot deck, the Headless Horseman tarot deck, a Buddha deck, a Christmas deck, and then the one that I bought for myself online from them directly, the American Renaissance tarot deck. I was like, what? You've got to be kidding me. And I, when I first saw it, I thought, you got to be kidding me. Okay, that was seriously my first thought. But then when I was looking at it, because they have some screenshots on their website, the different major arcana for tarot, there's the Empress. Guess who they have as the Empress? Margaret Fuller.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, oh baby. And the Priestess is Emily Dickinson. That is no surprise. Oh, the Devil card. So the Devil card is racism.
Oh, fascinating.
I was like, that's pretty brilliant. So,
because I was like, I'm trying to think of a person. Yeah.
Right? That's what I was thinking of. Yeah. So when I went down the list and I saw the Devil, I thought that's pretty pretty good. Instead of making it like Hemingway.
Right.
Although he wasn't part of the American Renaissance. But yeah, so more to come on that, because that is a gift I got for myself, as Emily mentioned earlier. That was not an extensive list. I just kind of scrolled through their tarot selection. They have a ton of different tarot decks. So we'll put a link in the show note to them. They're out of Pennsylvania, I believe.
Cool. So next up on my list is Cretacolor Mega Color pencils and the sharpener that goes with it. I am so in love with these colored pencils. I bought some for Laura, Chris's wife. She leads us in creative journaling once a month. So every once in a while, I like to give her a thank you gift. And they have the right feel of, actually, it's funny. This morning with Nina, I was using those like toddler crayons that are really big and thick. It's like an adult version of that because they're thicker and so they hold in your hands really well, and they're soft on the page, and they have endless colors of them. I've been getting them at Jerry's Artorama where they just sell them individually. But when I looked online, they have cases that have every color of the rainbow. So get yourself some colored pencils and get in touch with your inner child. It's fun.
Totally fun. So an option that I'm going to propose is that you support a small independent press. I've been a subscriber of Rose Metal Press for a couple of years now, and they're known for publishing hybrid stories. So think stories that combine two genres, that might be hard to place somewhere else because, publishers want to be able to categorize books so that they can sell them more efficiently. If you look at Rose Metal Press, for example, there are different subscriber levels from $35 up. And it's just a great way to support diversity in literature, I think. And even if a small press doesn't have this type of structured donation on their website, I'm sure, just like us, they'd be happy to receive a check in the mail as a donation towards their efforts.
Yeah, that's such a great idea. Well, the next one on my list, I was thinking about my ink pen loving friend across the desk, and it's out from this company called Diamine, and it's called the Inkvent Calendar, and it's an advent calendar for fountain pen lovers.
Wow.
So every day you open a window and it's a different little bottle of fountain pen ink.
Oh my gosh.
And I learned about this through the author Catherine May, who is an avid ink pen user.
Wow. I love that idea. That's amazing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Wow. So the last thing on my list is something that we stumbled across at a bookstore at Bank Square Books in Mystic is where we saw these, but they're flat paper pens. So it's like that ink cartridge, that is in, like a Bic pen or, the clicky kind of pen, but it is in a hard cardboard flat design. So they make great bookmarks, and that's the whole point of them. And the ones that we saw, they look like old-timey fountain pens. One of them is even a feather, like a quill, I should say, not a feather, a quill. But they're just really neat, and they're sold. We found a bunch individually in a basket, but they also are sold as part of a set. There are 6 of them, and they're on a cardboard sheet, and you can tear it off as you need the pen. So a great thing to keep in your bag. They don't take up much space or weigh hardly anything at all. But again, I think the main point and how I use the one I got is as a bookmark.
Yeah, and then you can just take notes if you're writing in your book, or I always take those Post-it sticky notes with lines, the bigger ones, and put them in the front of my book. And then I use that pen as my bookmark and my writing implement. Because if there's any reason that you don't have to get off the couch while you're reading, we'll take it.
Yeah, exactly.
I hate having to search for a pen when I'm in the middle of reading.
I know. It's just like, really, I forgot my pen. Like, yes. I have my dogs, I have my hot coffee, my blankie, my book, and where's my pen?
Yep.
Come on.
These are brilliant. Whoever invented these, so smart.
I should train one of my dogs to fetch a pen.
Oh, there you go. Report back.
Yeah. Pay a little rent in a way. Now, these flat pens are not sold directly by the producer to consumers. They sell to retailers, but they are available on different sites like the A site.
I was like, what is she talking about? Or if you go to your favorite independent bookseller, if you're lucky enough to have one, or Barnes & Noble, they are selling them in their sideline areas.
Right.
Yeah. That's where, like Chris said, we got ours at Bank Square Books.
And they're so much fun. Sidelines have gotten so amazing. Mm-hmm. They really have. And sidelines are those things that are not books, that are bookish or sometimes bookish related at checkout area usually. And some people scoff at that stuff as just like, oh, they just want my money. Well, yeah, of course they want your money. They got to stay in business. Yeah. But nowadays, it's not just like crappy plastic stuff.
Tchotchkes, as we would say. Yeah. And I think, we get a little bit of insider information, and Chris worked at an independent bookstore for years. That is actually where they really make their money, because on sidelines, the markup tends to be 1.5. So if they buy something for $5, they can sell it for 10. Books, they don't get to choose what they're marked at. Books come with a price tag on them, and there's not much profit in them at all.
Yeah, it's usually like 60-40 for books. So people don't get rich selling books. It's the other stuff.
And, also a lot of us have very wobbly, tall TBR piles. And so sometimes when I go to a bookstore now, most of the time when I go, I really want to support them, but I don't necessarily want to walk out with a book. And so I love going to the sideline area and buying a gift for somebody or for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So we also want to recommend 2 things that won't cost you any money. Maybe. Like a little bit of money. But one of the things is to make a handmade book. It doesn't have to be an extravagant book. There are books about hand-making books that you could find at your local library or your local bookstore or online. I've even seen instructions online how to make a simple book with a few sheets of paper and some string and a needle. And that could be, or even an accordion type book. That could be a lovely personalized gift for somebody. They could be blank pages. You can even make a little photo book for somebody, printing photos. And that won't cost as much money if you're looking for something that's handmade and maybe not as expensive, that you could use stuff you have around the house to create. Yeah. And I've done that for wedding gifts, and also for like when my kids left home, I did little handwritten cookbooks of favorite recipes. And it was nothing fancy, on pieces of paper that I either stapled together or went to Kinko's and put one of those spiral bindings on. So that's a fun thing to do also. And then the last thing, of course, is a biblio adventure. Biblio Adventures can be free or they can cost you money. It depends on what you decide for it to be. But one of my favorite sorts of Biblio Adventures we've already talked about in this episode is reading a book in common and then watching the book to film adaptation. It can be going to an author event at a local bookstore, or your local library often has author events, or they show movies, things like that. Spend some time with someone you love and do something fun.
Yeah, another connection with the library, too, is a lot of libraries have museum passes. So you can pick up a pass for, 2, 4, sometimes even 6 people to get admission free at a local museum, which is a lot of fun, too. And the libraries want you to use things like that.
Yes, they do. Yep. So happy holidays to all of you. Buy yourself a special treat. You're worth it.
We all need treats.
Yes, we do. And thank you so much for listening to the Book Cougars as we enter our anniversary season, which will be the next episode. Thank you for listening, and thank you for helping to keep the lights on.
Inside our hearts, as well as the lights over our heads. We wish you lots of happy reading. Thanks for listening to the Book Cougars with Chris Wallach and Emily Fine. We'll be back again with another episode in 2 weeks. Until then, come chat with us on social media, Goodreads, or email us at bookcougars@gmail.com. If you'd like to help support our podcast, please tell others about us, leave a review wherever you listen, and consider becoming a patron. Even $1 a month is a big help. Learn more about that on our website, bookcougars.com, where you'll find the show notes for this and all of our past episodes.
Thanks, everybody.
This episode was edited by Pat Keogh Sound Design.